Good evening. We are here tonight to do our How NRCS Can Help webinar through our top, which is Transitioning to Organic Partnership Program funded by the USDA. I am Holly Morgan here with Denise Smith from the West Virginia Farmers Market Association. And it looks like we have Julie Shire here from the West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition. And we are going to go ahead and get started tonight with our speaker, Dustin Adkins from the NRCS. He is our urban conservationist for West Virginia. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right, Dustin, if you want to go ahead and take it away for us.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into some basic, let me get my share going here. We'll jump into some basic programming information about NRCS programs. All right, now we're rocking and rolling. So when we start talking about programs in NRCS, the basic programming notion that most people have are our financial assistance programs, but that's just a very small portion of what we do. That's what's authorized through the Farm Bill. But our mainline bread and butter is just simple, plain old conservation technical assistance. So that goes back to the very beginning of the agency before we even had the financial assistance programs we have. But we use our CTA program to provide land users with one-on-one advice, proven conservation technologies, and the delivery system needed to achieve the benefits of healthy and productive landscapes. What that actually means is it's just free advice. If you're having any sort of issue on the property, or you need assistance with the planning or the design of a system where you need some technical calculations or something like that, that's the free technical assistance NRCS has always done. The other half of that is, I like to look at NRCS and NRCS field offices as kind of like social workers for farmers. So that's going to be the information resources and the referrals. In West Virginia particularly, but a lot of other places too, we kind of end up being the intersection of the agriculture community, and we're the ones that sort of know everybody and keep tabs on what other programs other agencies offer. So there's going to be a lot of occasions where you might have a question or something that we can't directly address, but we usually know who to call. So we can point you in the right direction for any number of types of resources, be they technical or financial. So when we start looking at our main line of financial assistance through Farm Bill programs, the one that most people is familiar with is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And that one is going to be where we provide the technical and the financial assistance to producers, and we're talking all kinds of producers. We don't hem ourselves into a box of crop producers or vegetable producers, but we also work a lot with forest landowners and folks that have a multitude of different resource concerns on their properties. The goals of that particular program are simply stated: improved air and water quality, conserve ground and surface water, increase soil health, reduce soil erosion and sedimentation, improved or created wildlife habitat, and mitigation against drought and increasing weather volatility. So those being the party line resources, we'll break them down a little bit further into what that actually means for the traditional customer, the end user of these programs. Primarily where most of the folks that are going to be involved with this organization are going to be croppers of some sort or another. That's largely going to be a program where we can assist you with resource concerns that you're going to find within your cropping system. So if inside your cropping system you are dealing with a lack of irrigation water, or needing to mitigate for the eventualities of drought, those sorts of things, we could certainly help you with getting some funding together for an irrigation system, and help you with all of the record keeping and the best practices to make that system go through an irrigation water management practice. Surface and groundwater in the context of cropping is going to be, and this is a big one I like to hit on because we're generally talking about smaller scale producers here. Is going to be the institution of like cover crops, which again ties straight into soil health. But we're here to treat the those same resource concerns the way we would on a larger farm by using a full suite of cover crop type practices and basic soil health, reduced tillage, et cetera, type practices to help even the smaller producer with those particular resource concerns. Reduce soil erosion and sedimentation. That one's going to fall into mulching and those sorts of practices. But again, we're going to take your cropping system and we're going to treat that from top to bottom. And in and of the same, we now have small scale payment scenarios for just about everything. So, if you're running a smaller scale grazing system, we certainly have practices that can help there as well. Again, to treat the same width and breadth of resource concerns that you would find in a larger operation. And, traditionally most larger producers within the state of West Virginia are generally already familiar with EQIP. We've been at it for about 20 years, so we don't tend to do as much outreach with that as we do with the smaller scale producers. But again, anything that we offer, large or small scale, we're covering all the bases these days. One that is particularly germane to the moment is mitigation against drought and increasing weather volatility, which we tend to be pretty much up against statewide right now. We have some areas that are in a full D3 drought and some areas that are in a lower state of drought. But we aren't the agency that responds to emergencies, but we are the agency that can help you look forward to what these potential risks might be on the landscape. And let's say you were running an operation where you had crops that were, fully producing right now, if it was vegetable crops and you were pulling water out of a surface water source or something like that, or you had a loss of water at this moment, looking forward to be able to mitigate against that, we could, build in some storage capacity into your system to help you get over those humps. So, again, like I said, we're not the agency that's going to be able to assist in a pinch like right now. That would primarily be Farm Service Agency, but we would be able to help you, look at that as a long-term potentiality and give you some tools to help you mitigate against that.
If I could interject quickly here, Dustin, put on my
Shoot.
conservation district supervisor hat. If you are experiencing drought issues and need assistance with watering, you can contact your local conservation agency here in West Virginia, your conservation district, shall I say. And you have services available through the extingency program, but call your local district office if you need assistance for the drought that is right now.
Yep. So underneath EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, one that is going to be of particular interest to this group. I believe this is a primarily organic or organic transitioning chat. We do have the fund pool for the EQIP Organic Initiative. And underneath that, the cool thing is you don't have to be certified, right? So to be eligible for the EQIP Organic Initiative, we're looking at farms that are already certified organic. We're looking at farms that are in the process of transitioning to organic, even if that is at the very beginning. And we do take into account smaller producers, which are still, I believe, exempt from certification from the National Organic Program. So that's if you have less than $5,000 in sales. But as I noted here, other conditions do apply. There's going to have to be some self-certification things taken care of along the way in that process. But what we can do under the organic initiative is a lot of the normal things we would do in other cropping systems, except we would do them organic. So the biggie that you're going to be looking at, and the main attraction, is the conservation activity plan for transition to organic. Again, like I said, you can be at the very beginning of that process, and we can help financially offset the cost of getting that conservation activity plan rolling and get that in place to get your full actual transition to organic rolling. And then we do have special set asides and slightly higher payment rates for things like cover crops. Not necessarily a different payment rate or anything for high tunnel or low tunnel, but nutrient management, we do have particular scenarios for organic, because we know that extra effort that you're going to, and those materials that you're using for your organic operation do cost more. So we've cut some things in there to definitely help defray those costs. Conservation Stewardship Program. That is one that our smaller producers and our organic producers have been less available to, less willing to avail themselves of in the last few years, because of the way the practices, or the enhancements were structured within that. The payment rates were pretty low, and then the overall payments were pretty small for small operations. We have addressed that. I will start with the elephant in the room, and that is that the minimum payment is now $4,000 in that program. That's $4,000 per year for 5 years. At the end of that 5-year period, if you wanted to take on some additional enhancements, you could roll your contract over another 5 years, and that minimum payment, assuming it stays at $4,000, it may go up even more, is going to still be attached. So you're looking at an opportunity at $20,000 in the first 5-year period, and another $20,000 in the second 5-year period for installing some enhancements, which we'll get into here in a minute. But with Conservation Stewardship Program, that's going to be a program, whereas EQIP is resource concern and practice focused. Conservation Stewardship Program is focused on resource concerns that are met, rather than resource concerns that are existing on the property. So we will do an assessment and run through your farming operation from top to bottom, and run you through all the normal. We have like a minimum list of categories we assess for resource concerns, and every one of those that you meet will be eligible for a payment. And then the second phase of that is you'll have to select at least one, in most cases, sometimes two enhancements. We don't limit the number of enhancements. So if you wanted to have 4, 5, 6, 7 enhancements, you're certainly welcome to. But those are basically, look at them as enhanced management practices, which would also have a payment attached to them. So again, traditionally on a small scale, those payments don't add up to much on either side of the scale there. But where we've attached that $4,000 minimum now, it turns out to be a pretty good deal. So I didn't have a slide for enhancements, so I'll dig into some enhancements a little bit. The enhancements within CSP tend to run along the lines of land use. So, say you had a grazing component to your operation, we could go into a list of 50 or 60 kind of grazing specific enhancements. If you wanted to say increase native species within your forage stand, then we certainly have an enhancement for that. It pays maybe slightly better than just a simple practice for planting wood, because it has a longer term management component to it. let's say on top of your grazing system, you also had a cropping system that went along with that. And you'd been interested in getting into cover crops, but you hadn't yet. We have an enhancement for cover crops that will pay again to defray the cost of the materials to install cover crops, but also an incentive for a longer term management change. The goal is to say, you're at this level of conservation and it's above the threshold that we hold for a payment, and you are interested in taking it to here. So once, to get you to here, we'll give you the resources to get you there, and the appropriate incentives to help you make that long-term change in the way you run your operation. The next type of program that we run are the agricultural land easements. This one is a little more tricky. CSP and EQIP are kind of everywhere every year. Agriculture land easements are some places most of the time, which I know isn't exactly confidence inspiring, but through agriculture land easements, we help to provide private landowners and other entities the ability to set aside land that is, of concern. So be that a wetland or something along those lines, or an endangered piece of farmland. And, we would provide you a payment for basically the purchase of, let's say, if it was the farmland program, the purchase of the development rights. So the difference between its value as agricultural land and its value as developed land, we could work through a few different mechanisms to determine what that is, and come to an agreement on, how much we would be willing to pay for that easement on that property, which theoretically would protect that property for perpetuity or a defined period. So some of these programs are, again, forever. Some of these programs, you can opt in at the 10, 15, 20-year range. They're all going to be a little bit different. The main line programs here are ASEP, Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, and that's going to encompass things that you might be familiar with, like FRPP, Farm and Ranchland Protection Program, where those are, again, like we discussed before, kind of the purchase of the development rights, and then that property stays in agricultural use forever, essentially. The goal there would be to protect, restore, and enhance wetlands, or protect working farms and ranches through conservation easements. The other popular one in the state is wetland reserve easements. So those WREs are going to be areas that have been previously degraded due to agricultural uses. So let's say you had a field that, if not for the installation of drainage tile, would have been a wetland, right? So let's say at some point back in the 60s or 70s, when it was the cool thing to do, there was a wetland on your property and drainage tile was installed. What that did was made that farm arable, made that ground tillable. So, say it went into corn or some other type of row crop for several years. If you're sitting on that property now and you don't have that agricultural use for it, it would be possible to put it into the wetland reserve easement program and collect that easement payment, and we would be able to come in at that point and do the engineering and figure out how much we could pay to convert that back to a wetland. So in the instance of a previously tiled field, we could look at possibly coming in and removing or clogging or breaking the drainage tile that's in there and allowing it to go back to a simple wetland. Or if the area needed it, or there were a situation where it had previously been ponded to some degree based on historical maps and those sorts of things, we could even consider the possibility of going back and putting in some sort of standing surface water type of situation. Now, what a lot of folks would envision is that we would come in and put in a big pretty pond and let that area kind of become a wetland for and a wildlife reserve based on that type of pond situation. That tends to not be the case generally. These are shallow water habitats that may or may not have standing water at certain points throughout the year. So certainly be aware of that. We would restore the ecological value of it, and it would have that high wildlife value, but wouldn't be the big pretty pond type of situation. Now, the kicker about the ag land easements that I had mentioned before is that they're not all available all the time everywhere. They're available some of the time and some places. The Wetland Reserve Easement Program is widely available throughout the state. There aren't any particular restrictions on where we would approach that program. The Conservation Easement Program, though, is still at this point tied to those mainly tied to those farm and ranch land protection boards, which are only available in some counties. There's a component to that program where the county has the opportunity to add a small fee to the every time land changes hands, and then as that money accumulates, the federal government can match that money for the purchase of easements. So it's kind of a joint thing. The ASEP Ag Conservation Easement Program does have a nationally available component. It's a little more complicated a process than the community, the county-based programs, but that's going to be something we'll cover here in a minute. You'll definitely need to talk to your individual field offices about. So as we transition into that, all of our programs and basically everything we do in the NRCS is very local. Our organization is extremely close to the ground, and the way that you approach these programs and the way you're able to get into certain things, it's all going to start with a trip to your local field office. So there's I think we have 14, we have 17 field offices. So we don't have one in every county, but we do have one in every conservation district, and some conservation districts have multiples. But what you would do if you were interested in speaking to your local conservationist, which can walk you through a more fine-grained explanation of what we are able to do, and also get out on your farm and base what is offered to you on your actual concerns on your farm. You're going to start, unless you already know where your field office is, you can start by going to the NRCS webpage. So you could Google just NRCS, and that would bring up the national page. The national page has all the same functionality, but if you were looking for the West Virginia specific touch to it, just Google NRCS West Virginia, or you can go to the link at the top of the PowerPoint there, nrcs.usda.gov/conservation-basics/ it's a very long URL, but anyway, you can get pointed toward the West Virginia page. I'd just Google it. So once you end up on the West Virginia page, everything is pretty cleanly laid out, and it's set up very well for mobile, so you don't even have to feel compelled to go to your computer. You can just pull it up on your phone. When you bring up the page, the navigation at the top on the darker brown bar is going to take you to most of the resources. The big ones are the contact tab. So when you click the contact tab, and you look to the left-hand side of that white box, you'll see Find a Service Center. If you click on that, it'll just ask you what state and county you're in. And once you tell it what state and county you're in, it'll tell you what office services your county. Like I said, we don't have offices in every county, but we have offices near every county. So let's say you were in Monongalia County, which is odd that we don't have an office in Morgantown anymore. Our state office and our area office are there, but the Monongalia County office is serviced out of Whitehall, which is in Marion County. So, you know, that would point you to the contact information for the office there, and give you the address, the phone number, and I believe the district conservationist name and their email address. So multiple ways to get in touch with the office, but again, we're still a very close to the ground, very locally driven agency. So if you had questions about any of the programs, uh, it all starts with CTA and getting a conservation plan, all the way up through the Farm Bill programs. Reach out to your local office and start that relationship if you haven't already. And if you have already, and I mentioned anything that you didn't know that you might be interested in, just give them a holler and tell them you might be interested in CSP or something along those lines. So the second place you're going to want to look is, let's go back here. If you click on the Programs and Initiatives tab, I thought I had captured that in my snip, but I did not. If you click on the Programs and Initiatives tab, that's going to take you to this page. So if you look at the left-hand side of this page, you'll see programs, you'll see easements, you'll see watershed programs, and you'll see initiatives. The big ticket item is going to be that programs tab. You're going to be able to access directly information about the Environmental Quality Incentives Program and the Conservation Reserve Program, or not the Conservation Reserve Program, the Conservation Stewardship Program, but also the Conservation Reserve Program. AMA and a few other things there that are a little less common in West Virginia. But if you had any questions about any of our programs, you're going to be able to hit those links and get some pretty high cut information about the individual programs. If you look down at the bottom of that left hand side and you see initiatives, that's where things like on-farm energy initiative, which is currently pretty hot, high tunnel, organic initiative, GLCI, those sorts of things. So anything that is narrowly focused on a particular type of agriculture and meets a very common need, you're going to see in those initiatives. So these are kind of the featured things we're actively pushing. And like I said, that organic initiative right there, it's going to be its own individual fund pool under the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and it's going to get some increased funding as well as some increased consideration when it comes to ranking. Folks that are interested in organic aren't going to be necessarily competing against everybody that wants all the normal stuff, right? You're just going to be competing against the folks that want the organic stuff. So we're required to set back a certain portion of our program dollars for those individual initiatives and do some extra outreach on those fronts. Not necessarily as germane to this crowd, but that on-farm energy initiative that you see on the screen there, that one is going to be of particular interest to people who are running maple operations. So if we have anybody on that ends up watching this or on the call that's interested in any of the sugar syrup producing types of things, we've done quite a bit with that in West Virginia over the last year. And then obviously we have traditionally done most of our business in that particular initiative in the chicken houses over in the Eastern Panhandle. But probably coming soon. We don't really have anything on the books right now, but it seems like that particular initiative is also going to be headed toward greenhouse energy efficiency improvements. So if you have any greenhouse producers that happen across this recording, definitely reach out to your local offices and speak to them about what we might be able to help you with there. At a bare minimum, you're probably looking at the ability to get an energy assessment, and then we can take a look at that energy assessment and see what it's determined we can do to make those operations more efficient. Please don't get confused between a greenhouse and a high tunnel. when it comes to energy efficiency. High tunnels are traditionally considered a zero energy consumption practice within NRCS because we don't have a provision for heating them. So, they're just passively solar heated. So again, this would just be straight greenhouses, and those would be your traditional, more solid types of greenhouses with a heating setup. So that is pretty much all I have on programs. That is the highest of high cuts on it. I do strongly recommend that you reach out to your local field office to get more detailed information and to, start the conservation planning process and let them figure out exactly what'll work for you the best. There's typically several different programming avenues for accomplishing an individual operations goals. But those are all going to come down to, actual boots on the ground and figuring out what your resource concerns are, what your goals are, and a myriad of other factors.
Dustin, would you say that it's a fair assessment or good plan if you're considering going to transitioning to organic, if you're going to make that jump and you haven't talked to your local conservation district and NRCS, do you think it's fair to say that you should probably give them a call first to just get an overview of your property before you ever open the transitioning to organic part?
So yeah, what I would recommend is if you're weighing all the options and you're kind of at the juncture of deciding what way to go, you know, call your local field office, have somebody come out, and if you don't have a conservation plan, we'll get a conservation plan started so we can at least see what the baseline resource concerns are. If you have, a certain subset of resource concerns that you could address to gain efficiency to a point that you might be profitable in a conventional setting, you should probably take a look at that. If you are to the point where you're about ready to pull the trigger, definitely, come in and see about signing up for a conservation activity plan to get the ball rolling. Perhaps we can help defray the cost of your transition plan. But overall, you know, NRCS is going to be one step in the process there, and hopefully we would be able to connect you with maybe somebody with one of the extension services or something to help you run those numbers to figure out, organic's a tough one because it's an emotional decision and a financial decision. So, we could probably hook you up with somebody that can help you run those financial numbers. And once you have a more clear picture of what that's going to look like, because, transition to organic, one, it's not cheap, even though we can help defray the costs. And two, it might not even work if the markets where you aren't willing to bear the costs. So getting hooked up with somebody to help you figure out some of those financial ins and outs and make that decision, probably a good idea. And then once you're ready to take off down that road, we NRCS could assist again with that transition plan or any practices you need to make that go, and ultimately hopefully get you into conservation stewardship program, which has a series of enhancements that are designed to basically help a transitioning operation, again, defray some of those long-term management costs. So CSP in that particular case, you've got your transition plan. We take your transition plan and we lay out within it what some of the mile markers are that line up with some of the mile markers in our enhancement for that. And we say, all right, listen, if you hit these things, that's what you need to do to get your enhancement payment. So yes, call the field office and start that process.
Yeah, if you haven't contacted your local field office, your conservation district, that is good free information to help you make those decisions. And as You can be connected with extension, people to help you run the numbers, to see if your local market can bear the cost, because you can't jump down the road of going organic but not charging an organic price, or you are putting yourself way behind the ball. You're not going to be productive that way. Does anyone have any questions? I see a question here in the chat. I don't know if you have this or any more information, Dustin. A map of the drought levels for this year. That wasn't I didn't prep you for drought talk, but it's the hot topic for the state right now.
Yeah. So no, I don't have anything. I don't keep up with the drought monitor where NRCS isn't upfront on that.
Mhm.
I would say reach out to your local farm service agency field office. They keep a running tally, at least for the counties that you're in there. What the drought monitor history has been on that, and those offices are checking that regularly.
Mhm.
I believe they may have an interactive tool they use that could show you the drought monitor for the entire state. So not 100% on that one, but I know FSA could probably help you out there.
Yeah, and someone suggested even the National Weather Service. Does
Yep. So the
anyone have?
National Weather Service is going to have the raw data. What you're looking at, though, from an emergency standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a farming standpoint, are those D1, 2, 3 drought monitor levels. Those aren't necessarily National Weather Service numbers. Those are tied to specific definitions within federal programming. So
Yeah, so FSA is definitely the best resource there. Does anyone have any questions for Dustin this evening?
I have one, of course. Do you know how many certified organic producers there are in West Virginia?
I don't have a clue.
Yeah, it is a
I know the answer is going to be not many.
Mhm. Yeah, the answer is not many, but that's why we're here today, to try to get people interested in transitioning to organic where it makes sense for their markets. Julie, did you have anything to add tonight? I don't want to leave you hanging out there. You got on right there. She says the Organic Integrity Database has that number. Yes. I should have that number, but I don't have it right now.
No, I guess I don't really have anything to add. I participate in NRCS programs, and it's really helped me up my game. I think that basically it's the only reason why I have bees. So it started my bee operation. It started my my mushroom operation. It kind of pushed me to get into cover cropping and learn more about that. It just kind of got me, started doing stuff that that I've made a part of my, like my regular practice.
And you were certified organic, right?
Mhm.
You were certified? That's what I thought. So, really what we wanted to drive home tonight is that you can use any of those NRCS practices on your organic site. Like, you can continue through those programs, even already being organic, or they have the programming to help you get transitioned over to organic.
Yeah. So that's a really important thing to note. Obviously within the nutrient management stuff, we do have a separate scenario for organic nutrient management, and again, it takes into account that it costs more. But every other practice, even our structural practices, if you're organic and one of our structural practices calls for a wood product near the ground, we're hip to that. We know we may give you a design that calls for a piece of treated lumber. All you have to say is, I'm organic, I can't use that. So we can go and we can pull down aspen or whatever. Even if it were a highly engineered practice, we can make those substitutions to cater to our organic clientele and make all that work for you. You're not going to be beholden to doing something that is going to violate your plan, and that would certainly look bad on NRCS if we were the reason you violated your plan. So yeah, it's our offices are open and accepting of organic folks, and we will make all of the contingencies we can to make any of our practices work for you. Holly, you're on mute.
I was, yes. One of our participants who lost service on their call said that they found a good site for the drought map on drought.gov. So
Okay,
there's
there you go.
that
All right,
listing,
good to know.
drought.gov. What was that?
Oh, just good to know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
thank
am
you.
curious.
These days you can put just about any question you've got in front of .gov, and you'll probably come up with a .gov for it. There's one for just about everything.
Yep. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Dustin or us this evening?
I guess a comment that I might have is that even if you're not working with the NRCS, if you've got a project and you have a question. So I had some land cleared, and my question was, what's the best thing to put down real quick to get some growth to prevent slips and stuff. The NRCS website has a lot of really good information, and will even recommend, what seeds you should use for the month that you're in and the state that you're in. Yeah, there's a lot there.
And I'll go so far as to say, if you didn't even want to look it up and you had just a quickie question about something you were involved in, call the office. We've probably got a practice that matches up with what you're working on, and we've got fact sheets and job sheets and everything you could ask for that we can just zip it right over an email. If you don't want any further assistance, if you do want further assistance, you want to talk about it, you want to get into it, you want to see if we have something that can help offset the costs, come on in, we'll talk about it.
That's wonderful. Any other questions?
Thank you, Dustin.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Dustin Adkins, our urban conservationist for West Virginia. If we have no further questions, thank you all for your time this evening, and have a nice evening.
All right, you too.
Thank
Thanks
you.
much.